Okay, it doesn't matter what Florida says or Ron DeSantis says. There is no such thing as good slavery or a good slave owner. I think Vinland Saga Season 2 portrayed that perfectly, in my opinion. Now, I know fans of Vinland Saga really didn't like the slow pacing of the anime and the fact that they weren't really throwing hands like that, but I enjoyed it a lot. But one of the things that stuck out to me like a sore thumb is by the end of the season is that Master Ketil is actually the worst kind of slave master. Ketil is the owner of a huge farmland, and to work a farm that huge, he needed to have helping hands and also slaves to be able to work the land. He buys Einar and Thorfinn and honestly treats them pretty well, so well that it seems like at first glance he's treating them as equals compared to the farmhands and the security force, who obviously look down on Einar and Thorfinn and all the slaves of the farmland. You're even more convinced in the beginning of the season that this slave master is different from others because he offers Einar and Thorfinn a deal to buy their freedom if they turn a forest into a wheat field. He even hesitates to discipline two slaves who got caught stealing, and he feels bad for them and tries to reason with the guards to not discipline them. But then we meet the slave master's concubine, Ironhide. She appears to be another slave hand on the farm just helping out, but you realize Ketil is actually having some relations with her, and you can tell that he loves her more than any of the other slaves on that farm. It all comes crashing down. Ketil pays a visit to Denmark to pay a nice tribute to the king of Denmark, King Canute. At this point, King Canute sucks. Like, he is portrayed as a power-hungry tyrant who is haunted by his dead dad's head and is also in need of resources because he fears that there will be a revolt from England. So he's left with the option of having to seize Ketil's farm, but in order to do that, he has to bring him in on charges, which this just shows you how much Canute has changed in season 1. Like, he's willing to do anything to get what he wants. So he ends up plotting to have Ketil's sons kill some of the king's guard, and he does. But Ketil's other son goes crazy and he just starts killing everyone, and I mean everyone. Master Ketil is then perplexed and thrown off guard by all of this and has to flee to Denmark. But while Ketil's sons are going crazy and he's about to get thrown in jail, Ketil's farm is pretty much being turned upside down. A slave ends up escaping and killing his masters and their family, which turns out to be Ironhide's husband, which, long story short, Einar and Thorfinn try to plan something in order to be able to help her escape with her husband, which ends up being a total fail because he ends up dying and it just doesn't work. Ketil gets back and finds out that the farm has been going crazy, along with Ironhide trying to escape. And with all the things that have happened to Ketil, along with Canute declaring war on the farm, he comes across Ironhide, his favorite slave girl, with the knowledge of her trying to escape. And he decides to beat the brakes off her. Despite what anyone would tell you, this idea that there was ever such thing as a good slave master is honestly nonsense in my opinion. In slavery, no matter where it is in the world and the time, you were usually owned as property, meaning that as property, the master could treat you however which way he wanted. He could discipline you and even kill you if he desired to, because you were his property. Vinland Saga brought out this idea that a master could be as kind as ever, but push him to the edge, they'll turn out to be just as cruel and nasty as any other bad slave master. And it doesn't matter how good they treated you as a slave, if the slaves seem unhappy to be under the master, that happiness is not real because it's bound under the conditions of the slave. The slave owner sets the conditions for happiness and can choose whether or not to give it to you. To be a slave means you have no autonomy over yourself, but you serve the one who has bought you without guarantee of being treated like you are someone. Ketil, he loved Ironhide. Like, you thought he could do nothing wrong to her. Like, we saw how well he treated her and even rejected his own wife because she was old and Ironhide was young and beautiful. But the moment he felt betrayed by her and realized she would rather be free and not with him, he treated her like nothing. This makes me think of my ancestors in the transatlantic slave trade, and you would have to suppose that a Christian slave master who on one hand claimed to love Jesus would also do devotions with their family and probably went to church every Sunday, but on the other hand kidnapped people made in the image of God, beat them, enslaved them, treated them like they were less than human for their own personal gain. And sure, they probably had some slaves that they loved more than others, but guaranteed if that slave stepped out of line, they'd be treated just like Ironhide. This goes against Jesus' biblical command of loving your neighbor as yourself. It also goes against Exodus 21:6, where stealing another human being is considered an assault on the image of God. Vinland Saga, I believe, did a great job in pulling out this false idea, in the West at least, that there was ever such thing as a good slave master, because if we're being honest, you walked in the wrong time. Vinland Saga, I believe, did a great job in pulling out this false idea that there was ever such thing as a good slave master, because if we're being honest, if you needed to enslave another person to do your work, I don't think that makes you a great person. Anyways, I have more breakdowns from season 2 coming soon, but if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next video.